Welcome back to Inside the Grandmaster Thought Process. This is episode 3 and today we want to focus on how do you win a1 position. Let's jump straight in. This is a position a member of my Simplified Chess Improvement System community has inquired about, and the question was, how does white win? Right? We're up a bishop for 2 pawns, but the question is, how do we actually convert this into a winning position? So now I'll ask you, dear viewer at home, stop the video, think for 2 to 3 minutes, and then write down your thoughts. Then you can continue with the video and compare them with mine. Let's go. So this is the post that made me make this video. Why to move is much better in this position, but how to convert. I see white's bishop pair and black's passive rooks, but how to take advantage. Almost all engine moves are pawn moves, okay? That's a spoiler, but doesn't really help us that much. When white exchanges down, will the bishop be enough versus the 2 pawns? Thank you. Okay, let's jump right in. So what I often see when I put such positions up for students is that they are immediately looking at active opportunities and kind of just want to convert immediately, right? That's probably also the reason that Toon was unsure about this position. Because, well, spoiler alert, there's no real super concrete way you can calculate until the end that is totally winning. We are just up a bishop for 2 pawns, which is technically speaking winning. And if we switch on the engine, which we can do later on, we'll get to that, how to dissect it from the engine, what's actually good and what not, then we will see that many moves are like +5, +4, everything seems winning. And when we watch a game from a Grandmaster, for example, well, there will not be any annotation anymore because basically they expect a Grandmaster to win this easily. Or if you watch a stream, they will say, oh yeah, this is completely winning. But the question is how? How do you actually win that? And the answer is not by finding a concrete way to win, but actually by seeing how your opponent could get out of this misery, stopping these ideas and slowly improving your position. So in this position, it's really more about prophylactic chess than concrete attacking moves winning some material. Here's what I mean. When we look at this position, the rook is extremely active. The bishop is extremely active, right? And as Toon mentioned also, black's rooks are extremely passive. So the main question I have here is there a way for black to activate their pieces? Is there a way for black to get a little bit out of this misery? Because honestly, for black already, if they would be able to trade down some material, for example, this rook against this rook, that would already be kind of a step closer to a potential draw, even though, well, we're still up a bishop for 2 pawns, right? So what I'm looking at is active opportunities for my opponent and not what I can do right now. If there would be kind of a totally winning move, or if I could bring a second rook imaginary on the 7th file and just attack f7 and win all the pawns, then I would do that. But that's just not there, right? Rook d7 is not working. Rook takes c7 is obviously not working. So I can't do that. So then I'm looking at the black perspective. So what can black do here? And one of the basically only active ideas there is the move g5. We can look at why this is. For example, rook f8 always fails to bishop takes f7 check or rook takes f7. So that rook can't move, right? Rook c2 somewhere always fails to rook takes c7, okay? Pushing the pawn to d5 fails to c7 hanging. That also does not work. And bringing the bishop around, well, where is the bishop actually going, right? Maybe you could try to do something like that, but what does it do on g6? Still not that much. So it really seems like black is kind of tied down, and our goal will be to keep black tied down and then to improve our position. So first stop their counterplay, then improve our position. Why is g5 an idea? g5 is an idea because it attacks our bishop. Let's say we make a random move, okay, a3. g5, bishop is moving away, king to g7. Now, king to g7 doesn't do that much yet, but the idea is king to f6. So let's say we continue logically, king to f6. And now there is actually an idea of, for example, playing rook to e8 and trading off one pair of rook. Because let's say we play h3, again, just for the sake of showing, there is now this attack on the rook, so we can't capture on c7. And black kind of got a little bit out of this crisis. If takes, bishop takes. Now, this position is still objectively winning, but it got much harder because now really we have to kind of grind our opponent down. Maybe they will play like bishop to e6, slowly maybe start running their passed pawns or potential passed pawns on the queen side, and it could get more tricky. So this is kind of what we want to avoid. And just to show why this rook e8 idea didn't work before, if we were to play rook e1 immediately, after rook to e8, again, this doesn't work. So you can think for yourself shortly, how does white win here? White can take on f7 with check. It's kind of important. Rook takes e8. And now we win an additional pawn and have traded so much material that this should really be quite easy to win. So in this position, I'm saying myself, well, the only way for black actually getting out of this pickle is by playing g5, because g6 never works, bishop takes h6. King away never works because f7 is hanging. We've seen that the rook can't move, this rook can't move, and this bishop really can't move that much either. So how do we stop g5? Well, the answer is playing h4. So h4 would really be my move in this position. We can go a little bit deeper later. And then let's say black plays a5. Now it's back again to you. What is white doing here? And the key question really is, what is black's idea? Is this just a random pawn move or is there an idea? The idea is again to get out of this annoying pin on the f7 square. So black wants to play a4. So let's say we play just king h2, a4. The bishop wants to stay on the diagonal, bishop to c4. And now either d5 or b5. I like b5 better. This bishop is kicked away. We need to go away from this diagonal. And now again, black can slowly go with rook to e8. Start trading some pieces. You don't want to trade everything as black, but at least you kind of get a little bit closer to activity when you trade down. And then, like in theory, a bishop against two pawns, right? You're only down a pawn, so you still have some chances. You don't have any chances if you have no activity at all. So again, we can go back playing h4. So we stop g5, right? After a5, how do we stop this bishop going away from this diagonal? We can play either a4 or a3. That's it. So we play a3. For example, there's a4. Bishop tucks into a2. Beautiful. And it's really, really hard for black to make any move here. It's nearly a Zugzwang, actually. Black might, for example, push the b pawn, b5. And now we can continue with more improvement moves. How could we improve our position further? Now, black doesn't really have a threat anymore. Like, this bishop can move, but basically nothing else will happen. Again, rook can't move, king can't move. This pawn can't move because this one is hanging. Also, if this pawn is moving, g6 is not an idea at all. Let's look at this. King h2, h5, king is moving. Whenever g6 is happening, what is white doing right here? White plays bishop to h6, attacking this rook. And then f7 is lost again. So this is also not an option, right? So black really doesn't have any moves anymore. So now it's time for us to say, how can we improve our position? What is a good way? There are a few ways, but you might take, again, a little bit of time, think for yourself, and then compare with what I'm saying right here. Okay, so I see one line that I really, really like, which is just improving our worst placed piece. That's a very good idea as well in such positions. Now that our opponent doesn't have ideas anymore, basically not have ideas anymore, we can improve this rook on a1. Or we could talk about the king as a bad placed piece as well, because it's an endgame, and kind of bring it in. As I showed in one of the lines, maybe king is going to g3, or we play f3, king f2. These are options as well. But what I like the most is rook e1. Now again, important to say, on rook to e8, we always have this bishop takes f7 shot, right? We could also just stay, not do anything, and after rook takes e7, we take, and then black has a problem as well. But I like just a concrete way of saying, okay, that doesn't work. So black really doesn't have many moves. I assume that bishop b7 or bishop a8 will be the moves. There is also bishop e8. All of them are super, super sad. So let's say bishop a8. What is our rook doing? Rook is going to e3, say bishop to c6, and we just play rook g3. And I think this just decides the game right here, right now. The problem is black is now pinned here as well. So bishop takes h6 is a threat. We've talked about king away gives up the f7 pawn. So we win an additional pawn. Conversion will be easier. g6 doesn't work because h6 is hanging. And even if h5 is happening, bishop h6 is a pin. And the exchange, we will win the exchange on f8. So that's basically the winning plan. Now, I haven't looked with the engine at this, but I really can't see how black is avoiding that. So first we go h4. Let's move back. Okay, first we move h4 because we want to stop any activation for black. We don't want the king to get out of this annoying pin. Then after a5, we make sure that the bishop is staying on this diagonal. And then, because we now have all the time in the world, we can just think, how can we get the worst placed piece into the game? It's not e7. We would love to have two rooks on e7. Doesn't work. It's not the f file. It's a little bit harder to make something happen on the f file. We could also try to do this, this, and this. That would be another idea to just say, how can we attack f7 once more? But what I like most is to, after b5, rook e1, bishop is moving away, rook e3, and then rook g3. And we have this threat of bishop takes h6, and black is in such a horrible position that there is nothing black can do about it. And by the way, it's also important to note that h4 is also a luft for the king. So whenever there is something like rook e8 here, we can just easily take either here and then here, or we can take on c7, check, king h2. Thank you very much. We are in no danger at all. So this is basically how you win such a position when your opponent has absolutely no counterplay or is very passive. You want to spend first your time to make sure that they stay passive, and then you have all the time in the world to actually do your own plans and to win this position. So let's check very shortly if the engine is agreeing with me. Oh, wow. I really like that. h4 is the first move, right? If you don't understand the reason for h4, it seems like a random pawn move, but actually h4 is stopping g5. So even the engine likes that most. a3, a4, f3, bishop g3 just shows you that the position is completely winning. That is a good thing to realize, is that when you have so many lines that have roughly the same evaluation, it usually is that the position is just generally winning. You don't need a tactic to win it. But it's still good to know what do we do with that, because if we just shuffle the pieces around, it might not be as obvious. So if we play h4, what is black going to do? You can see a5 is one of the moves. And again, this is actually very nice that the engine is agreeing with me that the two best moves, pushing the a pawn so that the bishop stays here. So we said a3, a4, bishop a2. And now what's going on? Bishop b5 is a move, h5, not really much happening. For example, d5 is already a move. I always find that if we can just for free take a pawn, we can be very happy about that, right? But the engine is so desperate that is even giving up the c7 pawn. But a human would try not to give up anything, so I think a human would actually play b6 or b5, both of them fine. Now let's see, rook a1. Okay, the bishop is moving away, b5. Okay, let's give him b5. Rook e3. Now again, c5 is just losing a pawn, so a human doesn't do that. King h8, again losing a pawn. So when you use the engine in such positions, you don't want to go in what is the best engine line. You want to go in what is the logical human defense, which is trying not to give up any material, because we start realizing if we only have one pawn for a bishop, it will be really dire straits. Right? So let's say, okay, for example, bishop e8 is one of the moves that we can look at, rook g3. Oh, this is actually interesting. So this is a better way of defending, because now because the bishop is on e8, there is king h8. So it doesn't lose immediately. This is actually interesting. So you see that the engine can also continue or can actually find better defensive resources than me. I understand h5. It's very fun to see that after basically every move that we're playing, black basically just gives up material. Again, we want to see the lines that don't give up material. Let's say h5. What happens if black doesn't give up f7, c7, or h6? So maybe king h7? Oh, wow. And now you see that the computer starts to see some very beautiful tactics, but we could also continue to improve our position further by bringing the king, for example, or it seems like the computer likes one of these ideas, for example, bringing the bishop here to attack g7, or playing bishop b1, now having the bishop on this diagonal. King can't go back to g8, there's h6 always. Takes here, and now you can see this bishop d2, bishop c1, which are with the idea of playing c4, playing bishop back, going here, attacking g7. So if we do the same thing, black is moving around, bishop d2, bishop e8, bishop c3, and now we really get into a pickle again, rook to g8, and now finally bishop f5, we attack this rook and we take this pawn. Okay, so this was a very long line, but that's how the computer can still defend even these hopeless positions. If you push him the right way, it can be very annoying because it's been so long that we create threats, but we don't have to lose patience. As long as our opponent can't do anything active, we can just shuffle around and play slowly, right? Even if we go back here and we're like, oh, my opponent is going to play king h7, king h8. What we could do is to say, okay, is our king better on d2, for example? And so we could just play with king h7, we can go king f1, king h8, king here. And we can see, okay, does that work better? It's a little bit shaky on d2. It's not really clear what it does on d2. So the computer actually wants to bring it back sometimes to g1. But we could do that, right? We can also decide, okay, is it better to shuffle somewhat else around? Can we try doing this? Bishop e3, for example, allows the c5 move, right? We want to play bishop d4, but there is c5. Then maybe we can go back. Now we attack this one. Still, I don't love this. Rook d8. Maybe there is d5. Again, black could have a little bit of activity. So what I want to look at are moves that keep black in this forcing situation of going king h8, king h7, king h8, king h7. As long as I can force black to do that, then we are pretty happy. And I think having looked at this position a little bit longer, giving a check here immediately, king h8, and just going bishop f5 is the cleanest of wins. Just attack this rook. This rook has to move away. We take the pawn. We took another pawn. We will probably take d6 because it's super weak at the moment. And then we will really win the game. That's it for this one, guys. Don't forget to like and leave a comment below. And if you liked this type of video, go check out the episode 1 and episode 2, which you see somewhere on the screen right now. Click on it and enjoy it. See you next time.